I'd now like to introduce John Tully, who is the Director of City and Organisational Strategy at Belfast City Council. And as you'll be aware, that the review of the Belfast agenda has been ongoing for a number of months now. So today, John has kindly joined us to give an update on the progress of the review and what we now will be working on moving forward. So thanks, John, for joining us.
And thank you, Irene, and well done to you, Jim, and everybody else on the panel for a really thought-provoking session today. I found the speakers really fascinating in terms of the content, so well done to everybody on that. Yeah, as Irene said, I'm just going to give a very quick update on where we're at with the update of the Belfast agenda. And this is a piece of work that's going on between now and the end of March. And I suppose the most important thing from my perspective really is to get to the stage where we're getting to specific actions that we're going to take forward over the next 4 years as a partnership. So that's, I suppose, the real outcome from this piece of work, alongside a reviewed Belfast agenda document. And the work has really started in earnest now. And I'll just very quickly run through what we've done so far and what we plan to do next in the next couple of months. I suppose just to emphasize as I do that at the heart of this very much is what we're trying to do is to take a co-design approach to this. And I know that co-design is an overused word these days, but we have put a lot of effort into making sure that it is done in a partnership, and we have statutory partners and we have community and voluntary sector partners, and we really want to make sure that as we do this, that this is a process that involves everybody and that everybody feels a shared sense of ownership around the overall plan whenever it's been created. And one of the things that we did whenever we started, and you can see the timeline, we've been through this, in terms of creating the Belfast agenda in 2017, a huge amount of consultation across the city through the Belfast conversation to create that version of it. And obviously we've given an update on progress 2019 and been through a pandemic, which has really dialed up a lot of the challenges that we have as a city. So the review has very much been done in that context. But in terms of making sure that we had a true co-design approach, we thought it was really important to have a set of principles that we would all sign up to as a partnership to make sure that we had that approach. And one of the key things really was to make sure that the impact could be felt by people, both individuals, families, communities right across the city, in terms of the impact from the added value of working in partnership. So we were very keen that over the next 4 years that's the big area of focus. And we wanted to do that in a way that was done with the communities in Belfast. So this is very much about doing it with them and alongside, rather than to or for. So it's very much about fully engaging with people in Belfast to reflect their ambitions and their desires for the city. And then it's about using a really strong evidence base to make and support those decisions. So looking at the work that's been done already across the city, and we've seen some really fine examples in the past few years of work that's been done across the city that we can build upon and learn from. And then we very much want to have an approach that's based on the partners bringing both people and money to the table to solve those issues and drive forward that partnership working. So I just wanted to emphasize that, in terms of the overall approach here, because it is very much one of that kind of co-design and additionality from the action planning. So in terms, if you want to just pop to the next slide, please. We've been through the first round of that engagement across the city, and we went out through a series of different workshops. You'll see that we've done ones north, south, east, and west. We've done sessions with communities of interest. We've also done sessions with children and young people and with older people. And we've got a continuous process of engagement through the YourSay platform that Debbie mentioned earlier there. So there's been continuous engagement up to this point, and we do plan to go back out again once we have the next stage. at a point where we want to hear people's views on it. So really encouraged by the level of engagement so far, and keen to, again, hear views as we go back out again. I will come back to this in terms of how you can practically get involved in that if you haven't already, because there's opportunities for that to be a continuous process there. So through that process, we checked that the vision and the outcomes and the big themes that we wanted to focus on were the right ones that really resonated with what communities felt. And if you want to pop to the next slide, you'll see some examples of things that we heard when we went out. We certainly heard the views around climate and resilience as a city as being one of the real central and urgent issues that people in the city were most concerned about. There was quite a bit of discussion around economic recovery, but a real desire to be more specific in terms of what we actually mean by that and how inclusive it would be. And we heard quite a lot about housing in terms of stress on the system and the need for additional social housing as well. So those are just some very quick examples. And next slide gives you a sense of the slightly different views across the city, very common themes, but quite often they were highlighted in different levels of priority. But certainly, big themes emerging there around health and mental health, around jobs and skills and employment, around climate and regeneration, both within the city and at a neighbourhood level, and also that focus on poverty as well. But we also heard a real strong desire for greater accountability on the performance of the community planning partnership. So there's a lot of work that we plan to do there in terms of publishing our progress to date and being really open and transparent about the work that we're doing. So one thing that we heard consistently across the city and from the panel, and Jim had mentioned this specifically, was the real concern around fuel poverty. So whilst we were going out and looking at the plan for the next 4 years, we really recognized that as one issue that we needed to move on really, really quickly. So we heard that loud and clear, and through the community planning partnership earlier this month, we got agreement to mobilize the partners to take a look at that urgently, to make sure that we give specific action to that issue as quickly as we can. So that work will be taking place in the next number of weeks, really, to mobilize around that issue and get a combined action plan. Now, obviously, there's been some fantastic work already done in that space, and programs like the Warm and Well program that's been done through community planning has really helped. But we did recognize that there was a strong desire to do more on that. And if you want to hop to the next slide, please. The key messages that we heard really was based around the 8 themes that are there in the first 2 rows in terms of health and health inequalities, economic recovery, skills and employability, educational underachievement, housing, recovery and regeneration in neighbourhoods, climate, resilience and sustainability, and then active and sustainable travel. So those were the big themes, and cutting across those was that consistent desire to focus on inclusive growth, give particular emphasis to our children and young people, and also support older people, and then create that sense of a shared and inclusive city for everyone. Now, there was a recognition, obviously, that each individual organisation can address some of the challenges that are identified on that slide, but of course, the need for partnership working has never been greater than it is now, really, in terms of recovering from COVID. And I suppose what we're really hoping is that through the partnership that we get that alignment between government departments, between local government and the statutory partners for community planning, and with the community and voluntary sector as well. So really what we're aiming to do now is get to that local action planning stage and focus in on those things that where over the next 4 years we can collaborate and drive additional value through the partnership. And that's the process that's underway next, really, is to pick a small number of really high impact things that we can do that will be felt in a positive way by communities on the ground, and focus on those over the next 4 years. So the final slide then is just to outline the timescales for that work. So we've done the baseline review across the city in terms of those activities that are underway, or that to provide the information that will help us as we get into this detailed planning stage. And we're assembling that information so that that can inform the next phase of the work. So what we're going to do during this month is really to identify those big areas that we want to focus on in terms of the specific strategic intent or outcomes that we want to achieve, and then how we'll measure success on an ongoing basis. And then we'll move into a phase of action planning around those, so that we really can understand specifically what we'll do over the next 4 years. And that's what we'll take back out across the city to get views on. And Irene mentioned earlier that Irene and I co-chair the group that designs the approach to going back and engaging with the city on these things. So Irene, myself, and that subgroup will be getting together in the weeks ahead to figure out exactly how we go back out to the city and engage around those action plans as we develop them. In parallel with that, we'll be drafting the overall strategy document for the Belfast agenda, and that'll be in 2 versions. One which will feel very similar to what we have at the moment, and the second will be a shorter, easy read version of that, which we hope will be much more accessible to people and to communities as well. So that's a very quick overview, Irene, in terms of the overall approach to the next phase. I would just, I suppose, to close, just really encourage everyone to take a look at the YourSay platform in terms of contributing to the overall conversation on the Belfast Agenda refresh. And I will pop the link to that into the chat in a minute or two. But really, just again, to echo, the thanks to Irene in terms of all the work to put together today's conference. I think it's been fantastic, but also the real spirit and enthusiasm that comes from the panel and all the work that they're doing on community planning. I think it is really, really fantastic, and it bodes really well for the refresh of the Belfast Agenda as we go into this next phase. So thanks very much.